that stage, those moments of doubt just pop into your head. I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, why am I not like the others?
There are men who enter the public eye quietly, almost without warning, and yet somehow manage to stay there. Eduardo Mapelli Mozzi is one of those men. When Princess Beatrice of York announced her engagement to him in September 2019, most people outside of Britain's elite social circles had to ask the same question. Who exactly is this man? On the surface, the answer seemed straightforward enough. He was a successful property developer, a count by hereditary title, well-educated, well-dressed, and by every visible measure, a man who had built something real for himself. But the surface of Eduardo Mapelli Mozzi's story has never been the whole story. The deeper you look, the more complicated the picture becomes. And the truth about the man Princess Beatrice married is far more layered than the polished image he has always presented to the world. Eduardo Mapelli Mozzi was born on November 19, 1983, at the Portland Hospital in London, one of the most prestigious private medical facilities in Britain, historically associated with the British royal family. That detail alone tells you something about the world he was born into. His father, Alessandro Mapelli Mozzi, was a man of remarkable and somewhat unusual biography. Born in Argentina, raised in Italy and educated in England, Alessandro competed as a skier for Great Britain in the 1972 Winter Olympics, a remarkable fact given that he was not born British. He later reinvented himself as an international art dealer and became a Fellow of the Royal Society of Arts. His mother, Nikki Williams Ellis, carved her own distinct path through politics, charity work, and design. Eduardo grew up watching both parents move fluidly between worlds, adapting, rebuilding, and succeeding in different arenas at different stages of life. That lesson, the ability to shift and adapt without losing composure, would define Eduardo himself in the years to come. The family also carried an Italian hereditary title, Count of the Kingdom of Italy, granted in 1913 by King Victor Emmanuel III to the Mapelli Mozzi family. The title passed through generations, and after Italy officially abolished royal titles following World War II, the family continued to use it privately. It was no longer a legal designation, but it remained a statement of identity, a way of communicating who they believed themselves to be even after the country had moved on. Eduardo grew up connected to the family's historic villa, Mapelli Mozzi, in northern Italy, a 15th-century estate that had once served as a monastery. He was not a man who built his sense of self from nothing. He stepped into an identity that had been constructed over centuries. His education followed the path you would expect for someone of his background. He attended the Dragon School in Oxford, one of Britain's most well-regarded preparatory schools, before moving on to Radley College, and later completing a master's degree in politics from the University of Edinburgh. Every door along the way had been opened by privilege, connection, and family legacy. He walked through those doors with confidence and apparent ease. For all the advantages Eduardo had been given, 2011 brought something that no amount of wealth or connection could protect him from. His stepfather, Christopher Shale, died suddenly at the Glastonbury Festival. The circumstances were painful enough on their own, but they were made dramatically worse by timing. In the days leading up to his death, Shale had become a subject of significant media coverage after a private political memo he had written was leaked to the press. In it, he had criticized members of his own Conservative Party association in blunt and unflattering terms. The leak had already made his name a topic of public discussion across British newspapers. His death, therefore, was not a private family grief. It was a public event covered with cameras and commentary already focused on his name. What Eduardo did in the aftermath of that loss revealed something important about his character. Rather than retreating from public life, he helped co-found a charity, participated in fundraising events, including overnight cycling challenges through London, and supported charitable projects internationally. Whether this was pure grief turned into purpose, or also a deliberate act of image management, it demonstrated something that would come to define him: the ability to keep moving forward publicly while processing whatever was happening privately. He learned early that when your family name becomes a headline, you do not get the luxury of visible collapse. You perform stability even when you do not feel it. That performance became his default mode, and it has never fully stopped. In 2007, at just 23 years old and fresh out of university, Eduardo founded his property development company, which he named Banda. The concept was elegant in its simplicity. Identify undervalued areas of London, develop them into high-end residential properties, and sell them to the wealthiest buyers in the city. Over the following years and into the next decade, Banda grew into a serious operation. The company has overseen property developments reportedly worth in excess of £875 million, a figure that places it firmly in the top tier of London's luxury residential market. Eduardo has spoken openly about being dyslexic and has credited the visual and spatial nature of property development and design as fields that played to his particular strengths rather than his weaknesses. There is something genuinely compelling about that narrative. A man who struggled with traditional academic learning, finding a domain where his specific way of thinking became an asset rather than a liability. But Banda's story is not without its complications. The company built its brand around the claim of finding undervalued, overlooked parts of London and transforming them. Yet when one of its major projects landed in Notting Hill, one of the most expensive and sought-after postcodes in the entire country, property, journalists and analysts began questioning whether that founding narrative was entirely accurate. Beyond the marketing claims, there is a broader ethical question that surrounds any luxury property developer operating in London. The city is in the grip of a severe and long-running housing crisis. Tens of thousands of people are being priced out of communities where they were born and raised. When a company takes expensive properties and makes them dramatically more expensive, the displacement that results is not a side effect. It is the direct consequence of the business model itself. Eduardo has never publicly addressed this tension. He has always kept the focus on design, craft, and excellence, carefully avoiding the harder conversations about what luxury development does to ordinary Londoners. Before Princess Beatrice, there was another life. Eduardo was in a serious relationship with Dara Huang, a Harvard-educated architect who later founded her own highly successful design firm. Their relationship was substantial. They were engaged, building a shared future, and in 2016 they welcomed a son together, Christopher Wolfie Mapelli Mozzi, known widely as Wolfie. By 2018, the engagement had ended. There was no formal public announcement of the split, largely because there had been no formal public announcement of the engagement in the first place. It simply dissolved quietly, without statement or explanation from either party. What followed raised eyebrows. Within months of the relationship, with Dara ending, Eduardo was seen publicly with Princess Beatrice. The timeline prompted legitimate questions that have never been answered cleanly. When exactly did his relationship with Beatrice begin? Did it start after things ended with Dara? Or was there an overlap? No one from Eduardo's side has ever addressed those questions directly. What is clear and unavoidable is that Wolfie, a young child, found himself at the center of an enormous life transition. Through no choice of his own, he became connected to the British royal family through a relationship his mother had no say in. Eduardo brought a child, a broken engagement, and an unacknowledged past into one of the most scrutinized families in the world. He did so without public acknowledgement, without explanation, and without any visible reckoning. On September 26, 2019, Buckingham Palace, officially announced the engagement of Princess Beatrice of York to Eduardo Mapelli Mozzi. Eduardo had designed the engagement ring himself, collaborating with the British jeweler Sean Lean to produce a piece featuring a diamond in a baguette-cut set within a floral band. The announcement was met with warmth and curiosity in equal measure. Who was this man? How had he won the heart of a princess? The public was only beginning to form an opinion when, just 51 days after the engagement was announced, everything around them changed. On November 16, 2019, Prince Andrew, Beatrice's father, sat down for a BBC interview to address his association with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. What followed was one of the most catastrophically misjudged public appearances in the history of the British royal family. Andrew's responses, his tone, his apparent lack of empathy for Epstein's victims, and several deeply bizarre, specific claims he made in his own defense, destroyed what remained of his public standing almost overnight. Within 48 hours, he had stepped back from royal duties. The man who was supposed to walk his daughter down the aisle had become the most criticized member of the royal family in living memory. Beatrice's engagement had barely entered its second month when her entire world shifted beneath her feet. Eduardo found himself not just marrying a princess, but marrying into the epicenter of a scandal he had absolutely no control over. For a man who had spent his adult life carefully managing his public image, it must have been a profoundly disorienting experience. The wedding they had planned did not survive what followed. The chapel royal ceremony was postponed, and then the coronavirus pandemic arrived and cancelled the grand reception at Buckingham Palace entirely. What had been imagined as a significant royal occasion was reduced to an intimate private ceremony. On July 17, 2020, Beatrice and Eduardo were married at the Royal Chapel of All Saints at Royal Lodge, Windsor, attended only by close family. Prince Andrew walked his daughter to the altar. When the official photographs were released, he was absent from every single one. His presence in the images would have made the coverage about him rather than her. That decision, to photograph the joy of the day while erasing its most painful complication, was entirely deliberate. But inside the quietness of that scaled-down ceremony, something unexpectedly profound occurred. Queen Elizabeth II reached into her personal collection and offered Beatrice two historically significant items to wear on her wedding day. A vintage ivory silk taffeta gown, originally designed by Norman Hartnell in 1962, which the Queen herself had worn to the world premiere of Lawrence of Arabia, and her diamond fringe tiara, the same one Her Majesty had worn on her own wedding day in 1947. It was a gesture of extraordinary personal significance. The Queen could not fix the scandal, could not restore the grand wedding, and could not protect her granddaughter from the circumstances surrounding her family. But she could offer her own history, her own most treasured things, as a statement that this day and this woman still mattered deeply. After the wedding, life moved quickly. Their first child together, Sienna Elizabeth Mapelli Mozzi, was born in September 2021. Their second daughter, Athena Elizabeth Rose Mapelli Mozzi, arrived in January 2025, several weeks prematurely, at Chelsea and Westminster Hospital. Beatrice later described the experience as deeply terrifying and profoundly personal, something that shook her completely. In response, she took on a new patronage with Born, a charity dedicated to ending premature birth globally. Meanwhile, Wolfie continued moving between two worlds, his mother's private life and his father's very public royal connection.